Good evening, friends. How's your week going? I'm Miles, 41, used to design smart home systems until my own family locked me out of ours. The eucalyptus trees smelled like wet coins the day they read my grandfather's will and gave everything to my sister. It wasn't the money. It was knowing they'd erased me while I was still in the room. But what they didn't know? Raymond left me something they missed. Has life ever blindsided you like that? Type your state below. Hit subscribe and check our other stories after this one. The eucalyptus trees smelled like wet coins as I stepped through the rusted gate of my grandfather's estate. I didn't know it yet, but this was goodbye. It had been over a decade since I'd last seen the place, long enough for the hydrangeas to die, the gravel to sink into the soil, and for my name to fade from every conversation inside. Raymond had asked for me personally, and now that I was back, even the wind felt reluctant to welcome me. He always said I had a mind for patterns and for exits. I remembered those words the moment I heard Diana's heels tap toward the porch. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how the drive was, just a sharp look that skimmed over my duffel bag like it was leaking something. "We put you in the East Room," she said. "You remember the one?" I nodded. The East Room had the worst plumbing and a draft from a cracked window that no one ever got around to fixing. It wasn't a memory. It was a message. Inside, the house still smelled like lemon polish and old paper. A layer of stale warmth clung to the air, like the whole place had been holding its breath since Raymond fell ill. I passed the study, its door half closed, and caught a glimpse of Gerald hunched over a set of ledgers. He didn't look up. I didn't slow down. The guest room was mostly untouched, save for a folded towel and a single pillow tossed on the mattress like a suggestion. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the bed, letting the silence settle. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Monica, probably, but I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't sure if I was here to help or to be watched. Maybe both. Later that afternoon, Diana poked her head in. "Raymond asked for you," she said, tone clipped. "He's awake." I followed her down the hallway, noting every photograph that hadn't changed. There was one of me, taken when I was 15, tucked behind Sloane's graduation portrait. It looked dimmer. I almost didn't recognize myself. Raymond's bedroom had been converted into a sort of hospice suite. An IV bag hung beside the bed. The light from the window fell gently across his chest, rising and falling slower than I remembered. But his eyes, when they opened, were sharp. "There you are," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, pulling the chair closer. "Here I am." He reached for the drawer beside him and took out something wrapped in a handkerchief. Slowly, with fingers that shook only slightly, he unwrapped it and held it out to me. An old pocket watch, silver, a little tarnished, his initials engraved on the back. "This used to belong to my father," he said. "Then me. Now you." I hesitated. "You do," he cut in. "And you will. There are things in this house that don't want to be seen. Watch them after I'm gone. They always forget someone's watching." I nodded slowly, closing my hand around the watch. It was heavier than I expected. I didn't know what it meant yet, but the weight was real. Raymond smiled, eyes closing again. "You still see the pattern, don't you?" "I do." He breathed in as if to say more, then let it out and drifted toward sleep. I stepped out of the room into the hallway. Diana was gone. Gerald stood at the far end, talking in a low voice on the phone. He turned away as I passed. Back in the guest room, I examined the watch under the lamplight. The glass was scuffed, and the second hand twitched every few moments. I pressed it to my ear. It ticked, then paused, then ticked again. Like it wasn't sure it wanted to keep going. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mattress creaked every time I shifted. Somewhere in the house, a pipe groaned. At one point, I sat up, unsure what had woken me, until I heard voices. Low, muffled, coming from the study. I slipped out of bed and walked quietly down the hall. The door was mostly closed, but not latched. From inside, I heard Gerald's voice, then Diana's. The will. Miles. He doesn't know anything. And then, laughter. Not the kind that fills a room, the kind that cuts into it. I backed away, heart heavy. Whatever pattern was forming, it wasn't new. It had started before I got here, and I wasn't here to stop it. I was here to see it through. Raymond died at 6:12 a.m. Diana sent the hospice nurse home before I could say goodbye. She texted me. Not called. Not knocked on my door, 30 feet down the hallway. Just a 6-word message. Raymond passed. Please stay respectful. He was gone. I stood in the hallway outside his door, unsure whether to enter or walk away. But the door was already closed. Latched. Final. And when I finally turned the knob, the bed had been stripped, the IV stand wheeled into the corner. The room no longer held the shape of him. He always feared not death, but being erased. I whispered that to the stillness, the way you might whisper to an empty pew. I didn't know if I believed in ghosts, but if I ever saw one, it would be him. Half smile, eyebrows lifted like he just caught you lying. The funeral was set for the next morning. Private, family only. No announcements, no photos. Gerald said it was what Raymond would have wanted. But I knew it wasn't. He would have wanted a brass band. Laughter. Students from the youth literacy program he funded. Veterans from his VFW lodge. Instead, we stood in a half-lit church with wet umbrellas and dryer sheet-smelling jackets, as if trying to avoid making this real. Diana arrived first, in a gray coat too sharp for mourning. Gerald followed, looking like he'd already decided who was welcome in grief and who wasn't. When Sloane entered, 20 minutes late, she wore sunglasses, heels, and a phone on a gimbal. Streaming, whispering to her followers. She's turning this into content, I muttered to no one. Of course she is, Diana hissed, not looking at me. The priest spoke for 6 minutes, about legacy, duty, and silence. When he said Raymond's name, nobody said, Amen. They just shifted in their pews. After the final hymn, Diana didn't cry. Sloane did, though it was hard to tell how much was for the screen. Gerald didn't flinch when the casket was lowered into the van. Outside, the wind picked up. I stood by the church door, unsure whether to follow or stay. We're reading the will at 3, Gerald said as he passed. You should be there. I planned to be, I said. He paused, as if registering the edge in my tone, then gave a half nod and kept walking. Back at the estate, the same living room where I once opened Christmas presents was now a temporary courtroom. Niles Keating, the family lawyer, sat on the edge of the leather couch with a manila folder. I took the chair across from him. Diana sat nearest the fireplace. Gerald stood, pacing. Sloane perched cross-legged on the arm of the sofa, one AirPod in. I'll read this once, Niles began, and for the record, this is the final, legally binding version signed October 3rd, witnessed and notarized. No one moved. To Miles Donahue, he said, Raymond leaves the following: sole deed to the Burlingame estate, full access to all liquid accounts held in his name, and majority shareholdership, 85%, of the Donahue Family Trust and Donahue Media Holdings. Silence. I looked up. Gerald's jaw had tightened. Diana's nails were digging into the armrest. Sloane smiled, then started to cry. To Diana Callahan, Niles continued, a one-time disbursement of $50,000 in Raymond's vinyl collection. Diana exhaled slowly, like trying not to vomit. To Gerald Callahan, My former business partner and stepson, $1, and my thanks for services rendered. Gerald didn't blink. To Sloane Callahan, my granddaughter, nothing. I pray she finds her own. Sloane blinked fast behind her sunglasses, then pulled them off. I was told, she began. Niles raised a hand. It's all here. Witnessed. Notarized. Raymond was sound of mind. There is a video backup if the will is contested. The weight of the room shifted. I was no longer just the one Raymond liked. I was the problem now. I want a recess, Gerald said sharply. This isn't over. You don't get to call recess, Niles said calmly. Then we'll see each other in court, Gerald snapped, stepping toward me. But you remember this, Miles. You won nothing. You just inherited the blame. I didn't flinch. That night, after they'd all stormed off, I sat alone in the dining room. The same room where Raymond once taught me to shuffle cards, told me that every family was a game of poker, half skill, half bluff. I stared at the estate folder, then at the framed photo of him on the wall. You always said patterns don't lie, I whispered. Behind me, the hallway creaked. I turned, but no one was there. The guest room door I'd always left open was now locked from the outside. Subtle, quiet, not accidental. I rattled the knob once, twice. No give. I waited a few seconds, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Just the soft throb of the baseboard heater and the rain tapping like fingernails on the window. Early winter in California had a way of feeling both heavy and weightless at the same time. They'll start with whispers before they start with lawyers. Raymond's voice echoed in my mind. He always knew how people operated, especially those close enough to call family. I waited another 10 minutes, then used the narrow screwdriver from my duffel to jimmy the latch, a trick he'd taught me when I was 12. The door opened with a soft pop. I moved through the hallway on quiet feet, passing the still dark study, the dining room where no one ate, and into the old parlor. That's where I found Niles Keating, alone, with 2 cardboard boxes and gloves on his hands. You're up early, he said, not surprised. I could say the same. He straightened up slowly. Just retrieving some personal files Raymond wanted safeguarded. From the locked drawer in the back of the study, I nodded toward the boxes. Those don't look personal. Legal precaution, he said. Better to have them with me than here. I'll take a look before they leave the house. He smirked. You don't have authority to... I have 85% of it, I cut in. That'll do. He hesitated, then lifted the lid just an inch. I caught a flash of invoices, folders stamped with medical and private. Before I could say more, Diana appeared behind him. Miles, she said with the voice of someone tasting something bitter. What are you doing up? I was wondering the same thing about Niles. She gave him a look. He replaced the lid. Let's talk, she said, turning and walking away. No option to refuse. In the kitchen, she handed me tea. Chamomile, no sugar, lukewarm, the kind you give to someone you're trying to calm or control. You've been under strain, she said softly. We're all grieving, but it's different for you, I know. I didn't answer. You're seeing patterns that aren't there, she continued. You're tired, unsettled. I spoke to someone, Dr. Ingrid Morales. She's excellent, familiar with complicated grief cases. You mean a therapist? More of a wellness consultant. She agreed to send over something mild, just to take the edge off. I stared at her. You're medicating me now? No one's forcing anything, she said, smiling. It's just a suggestion. Later that morning, a package arrived at the front door. No return address, just a white envelope with my name and a pharmacy seal I didn't recognize. Inside, a blister pack of pale blue pills and a single-page note with the signature Ingrid Morales, MD, The handwriting was too neat to be real. I searched the pill online. No exact match. No provider registry for Morales in the state database. That afternoon, I returned to Raymond's room. Something was off. A gap on the shelf. The drawer with his old notebooks was empty. The folder with his daily medical logs, gone. "Where's the binder that tracked his BP and glucose?" I asked Diana. She blinked, innocent. "I don't know what you mean." "You've seen me update it daily." "Have you, though?" she said quietly. Gaslighting, plain and rehearsed. I left the room before I said something I couldn't take back. That evening I called a locksmith, changed the locks on the study and the bedroom. I didn't tell anyone. I left one camera running, an old security cam Raymond had installed years ago, hidden behind a clock, just in case. At 2:57 a.m., I woke up with a weight in my chest. Something felt wrong. I checked the hallway. Empty. My door was slightly ajar. I was sure I'd closed it. I walked to the study and checked the cam feed on my phone. At exactly 3:03 a.m., Sloane entered the study. Alone. Hoodie, slippers, holding her phone flashlight. She moved to the desk, opened the second drawer, rifled through my papers. She looked panicked, like she was searching for something specific. Then she turned directly toward the clock, toward the hidden camera, and smirked. At 3:07 a.m., she left. I ran to the desk. I knew what I was looking for before I opened the drawer. The pocket watch was gone. My pulse spiked. I gripped the edge of the desk. That wasn't just a theft. That was a warning. Rain fell sideways across the stone steps as Gerald shoved my suitcase into the mud. The wheels dug straight into the earth, tipping the entire thing sideways. Clothes, documents, one of Raymond's old sweaters, scattered like trash across the soaked gravel. Gerald stood above me in the porch light. Soaked shoulders, flared nostrils, fingers clenched like he wanted to hit something, anything, but knew better. "You think this is yours?" he spat. "The house, the company, the legacy? You didn't earn it. You were barely even here." "I was here when it mattered," I said through clenched teeth. He stepped forward. I didn't move. I wouldn't give him that. "I warned you," he hissed. "I told you this wasn't over." "Trash, huh?" I said. "I'll remember that word." The rain soaked into my collar, my shoes, my bones. The emergency alert buzzed on my phone in my pocket. A landslide warning along the coast. Appropriate. The ground beneath me had already shifted. I'd confronted him less than an hour earlier. The missing medical logs. The forged signature from Morales. The disappearance of Raymond's handwritten note to the board. "You're accusing me?" he'd shouted. "You think I need to hide behind fake doctors?" "I think you already are." He grabbed me by the lapel. No warning, no build-up, just sudden, angry motion. Diana had entered halfway through, tried to play peacemaker. "Gerald, don't," she said, tone low but firm. "Not like this." His response was a shove, hard. I slammed into the coat rack, knocked it over. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the foyer. The servants didn't come. No one did. "Get him out!" Gerald barked. Diana didn't even look at me when she turned to Kenneth. "Assist him off the property." Kenneth, the longtime house servant, moved slowly, apologetically, almost, but he still walked me to the door, still held it open while Gerald dumped my things. I gathered the scattered clothes, stuffing them into the suitcase best I could. The zipper jammed. My hands trembled. Not from cold. Sloane appeared on the top step, holding a cup of tea. Calm. Detached. The kind of expression that says we knew this would happen. "You should have stayed out of it, Miles," she whispered. Then turned away. As I bent to grab the last of my papers, the pocket watch slipped from my coat. I watched it fall in slow motion, silver flashing against the wet air until it struck the stone edge of the step with a sharp crack. The face splintered. One hand spun once, then stopped. I picked it up, shaking. My wrist ached from the fall. The time was wrong now. Or maybe it had always been. No one came back out. I walked down the driveway in the storm, shoes slapping against the water, suitcase dragging behind me like a wounded animal. The gates were open. They were expecting me to leave, and not come back. I made it halfway to the end of the block before I stopped under the awning of a dark bakery. I sat on the damp bench and pulled out my phone. My fingers were too numb to type at first. Then I pressed Monica's name. She answered on the first ring. Miles? I need a ride. Where are you? I looked around. The street sign was obscured by fog and rain. I read the name off a nearby trash bin. 2 blocks from Laurel and Hemlock. By that cafe you liked. The one with the bad espresso. Silence. Then firm. I'm driving now. The motel carpet smelled like old coffee and cheaper regrets. I lay awake, gripping the broken watch. The ticking had stopped sometime during the storm. Maybe when it hit the step. Maybe before. I couldn't be sure, but the stillness of it felt louder than the rain that had soaked me to the skin just hours before. Monica was in the bathroom brushing her teeth with one of those travel kits you buy at gas stations. She hadn't asked many questions, just showed up, threw my suitcase in the trunk, and let the silence ride with us all the way down El Camino rail. You good? She asked, stepping out, wiping her mouth. Define good, I said, turning the watch in my hand. A thin crack ran down the glass. I brushed it with my thumb and winced at the sting. Must have cut myself earlier. But it wasn't the blood that caught my attention. It was something underneath the crack. A seam. No, a groove, just under the faceplate, barely visible. I sat up on the edge of the bed. Monica watched me, but didn't speak. Using the edge of a keycard, I pried gently at the groove. Something clicked. The face popped loose. Inside wasn't gears or springs. It was a tiny hollow, a folded piece of paper and a sliver of metal, no larger than my fingernail. A USB drive. My fingers shook as I pulled out the note. 2 lines, handwritten, contact Howard Langston. If this thing ever breaks open, know I loved you enough to hide the truth inside it. Raymond. I looked up. Monica was already next to me, reading over my shoulder. Howard Langston, she said. Name ring a bell? I nodded slowly. I think he came by when I was a kid, always in a brown coat, laughed like he couldn't control it. Monica grabbed her laptop from her bag and started typing. I leaned back against the headboard, holding the USB like it might disappear if I let go. She found him within minutes. Howard Langston, she read aloud. Retired estate attorney. Used to work with Bayview Financial Group. Taught part-time at USF. Still owns property in Daly City. I reached for my phone and dialed the number listed on a professional directory site. 2 rings. Then a calm, clear voice answered. Langston. I hesitated. Mr. Langston? This is Miles Donahue. A pause. Then, I've been waiting for this call since October 5th. My heart skipped. You knew Raymond left me something? I knew more than that, he said. I know exactly what they're hiding. The line went quiet for a second. Not dead, just waiting. I need to see you, I said. I expected you would. Click. I looked over at Monica, who was staring at me like she already knew what came next. What's on that drive? She asked. I don't know, I said, but I think it's what Raymond couldn't say out loud. Outside, someone was dragging a trash bin across the wet parking lot. A dog barked in the distance. Inside, the heater rattled once, then gave up again. I slipped the watch face back on, but the crack still showed. So did the message. Howard's house smelled like old paper and pipe smoke. the kind my grandfather used to light on winter nights. He lived alone in a Tudor-style home on a hill in San Mateo County, walls lined with law books and photographs of handshakes with mayors, senators, even a governor or two. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows over brass bookends and thick curtains. "He said they'd try to erase you before you even got a chance to speak," Howard said, sliding a coaster toward me like I might forget my manners. He wasn't wrong. I nodded, gripping the USB drive in my palm. It was warm from my pocket, the plastic edges slightly worn. I'd barely slept since we found it. Monica sat beside me on the leather couch, quietly absorbing every detail. Howard introduced us to Logan. Mid-30s, hoodie under blazer, tech consultant turned freelance fixer. His laptop was already open. "Raymond always had a backup plan," Howard said, handing over the drive. "He was meticulous, paranoid even." Logan plugged it in, fingers flying. "Encrypted," he muttered. "Naturally." "You can get through it?" I asked. He snorted. "Wouldn't be here if I couldn't." 10 minutes passed in silence, just the clicking of keys and the occasional crackle from the fire. Finally, the screen blinked. "Got it." He turned the laptop to face us. Raymond's voice played over a black screen. "If you're seeing this, Miles, I'm either dead or worse, ignored. Either way, this is what they won't show you." The video cut to documents, scans of account statements, letters from financial firms, email chains with subject lines like internal memo, asset diversion, and unauthorized disbursement request. Monica leaned in. "That's Diana's name, right there." Logan opened a second window. "She used a shell company in Nevada to funnel estate funds, off-books transfers, backdated. That's bad." "How bad?" I asked. "If anyone in the IRS finds this," Logan said, "we're talking fraud, tax evasion, possibly wire fraud too. They could go to prison for this." Howard said nothing, just folded his hands like a man used to long waits and longer battles. We kept going. Folder after folder. Raymond's handwriting on some of the PDFs, notes in red, underlined passages, warnings. And then we found it. "Whoa," Monica breathed. "This is..." Logan looked over her shoulder. "A draft will, signed, stamped, dated, but not filed," I said. Howard adjusted his glasses. "Because he knew they'd intercept it. This version names you as sole heir, Miles, full control, with strict clauses excluding Sloan and Gerald. Diana gets a capped stipend under a trustee." "And if it had been filed?" "It would have been bulletproof." Monica's voice was barely above a whisper. "So why didn't he file it?" Howard looked at me. "He was waiting for you to be ready. He thought if you rushed in too soon, they'd eat you alive." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "So now what?" I asked. Howard stood, walking over to a side cabinet. He opened it slowly, revealing a shelf of thick black binders. "You'll need someone who's not afraid to fight fire with fire," he said, "and I know exactly who that is." Trent McAllister greeted me with a handshake and eyes that had seen too many family wars. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. His grip was firm, his voice calm, in a way that made everything around him feel like it was moving too fast. The kind of man who could stand still in a riot and still think clearly. "Raymond once told me," Trent said as we sat down, "if I die and there's noise, it means I planned correctly." I didn't smile, but something in my chest shifted. Maybe trust, maybe fatigue. The law office smelled like toner and wet coats. Outside, rain streaked down the glass walls of the conference room in long diagonal lines. Inside, paralegals moved like clockwork, typing, printing, filing. No one paused to gossip. No one asked questions. Monica sat next to me, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of green tea. Howard leaned back in his chair, scanning the draft will we'd recovered from the USB. Logan was gone, his job done, but his parting words still rang in my ears. They'll come after the truth like it owes them money. I placed the folder in front of Trent. Inside, Raymond's signed draft will, a full audit trail of backdated transfers tied to Diana, and a set of flagged emails between Gerald and a tax consulting firm known for creative structuring. Trent flipped through it all methodically, nodding now and then. "This is robust," he said, "and dangerous." "To them or to me?" I asked. "Yes," he replied, not looking up. He reached for a red legal pad and began jotting bullet points, his handwriting blocky and precise. "Step 1, he said. "We file a motion with the probate court to recognize this draft as the true will. That buys us standing." "And if they object?" I asked. "They will, doesn't matter. It's about stalling them long enough to activate step 2. "Which is?" "Freezing all relevant estate-linked entities. That includes Donahue Media, the trust's financial instruments, and any high-volume accounts controlled by Diana, Gerald, or Sloan." He paused, flipping to a tax summary I hadn't read yet. Then he slid it toward me. Gerald's name sat at the center of a spider web of shell companies. Delaware, Wyoming, even a few offshores. "These aren't just suspicious," Trent said. "They're prosecutable." Monica leaned forward. "But can we prove intent?" "Doesn't matter yet," Trent said. "We're not trying to win the war today. We're cutting off their fuel." He stood, stretched slightly, then hit the intercom. "Emily, draft a freeze motion. Include financial exhibit set B and audit trail 7A voice on the other end. On it." By the end of the day, everything was filed. Court copies delivered. Notices sent. A judge had been flagged for emergency review, and at 4:42 p.m., the call came in. Trent put it on speaker. "This is Judge Lemieux," said a clipped female voice. "I've reviewed the emergency filings. I'm granting a temporary freeze on all accounts associated with the Donahue estate, including Donahue Media and affiliated LLCs. This freeze will remain in place until a formal probate hearing is scheduled." I didn't exhale until the line disconnected. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Trent said, "You just pulled the pin, Miles." Howard gave a slow nod. Monica placed her hand on mine. I looked out the glass wall again. The rain hadn't let up. But it looked different now, like it wasn't trying to drown me, just wash something clean. As we gathered our things, Trent looked back over his shoulder. "This will get uglier," he said. "They're not done." Sloan cried into a silk handkerchief on Channel 5, sobbing that she never wanted the money. The chyron under her face read, "Socialite speaks out. He's not who you think he is." Her makeup was flawless. Her tears glistened like stage glitter. Even the host leaned in sympathetically, nodding at all the right moments. Monica muted the volume. The silence felt louder. "They'll paint you as a villain if it gets them sympathy points," she said. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, at Sloane's perfectly practiced pain. The couch we sat on creaked as I leaned forward, grabbing the remote and turning the TV off completely. "Time to stop reacting," I said. "Time to redirect." Monica raised an eyebrow. "You have something in mind?" I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't used in years. Julie Stanton. We'd been in the same journalism program at UC Berkeley. She was tough, thorough, and hated staged narratives more than anything else. I hit dial. 3 rings. Julie Stanton. "Jules," I said. "It's Miles Donahue." A pause. "Well," she said, "that's a name I haven't heard since someone set off the fire alarm at Sathergate to protest housing cuts. Still one of my finer moments." She laughed, then sharper. "You okay?" "You're everywhere right now." "I'm complicated, but I've got a story." Is it about the inheritance mess? The crying sister, the dramatic will, the media freeze? It's about all of it, I said. And it's not the story they're spinning. I told her everything. Edited, careful, but real. The draft will. The USB. The forensic audit. Trent's court filing. The press circus. I can't promise a puff piece, she warned. If I fact-check and you're clean, I'll write it. But if you're not, I'm clean, I said. Raymond made sure of that. She paused. Send me everything. If it holds up, you'll hear from me in 48 hours. After the call, Monica's phone buzzed. She read the message twice, then handed it to me. It's from Logan, she said. He's been monitoring internal corporate servers. He intercepted a forwarded email chain. I read the subject line, Strategic Messaging Timeline. It was from Diana, dated 2 days after the funeral, sent to a boutique PR firm. Scripted talking points, media contacts, segment prep for Sloan, even recommended wardrobe colors. They had been planning this since the day Raymond died. She choreographed the grief, Monica muttered, right down to the designer handkerchief. 2 days later, Julie called back. I've got a feature, she said. It's clean and it's big. That afternoon, the Bay Ledger published a front-page piece titled Buried Heir, the $15 million inheritance war of Donahue Estate. It wasn't salacious. It was surgical. It detailed the legal filings, the frozen assets, the backdated financial transfers, and the leaked PR emails. It quoted Howard. Even included stills of the draft will and a line from Raymond's video. The truth has enemies. Protect it anyway. The last paragraph was pure Julie. What the Donahue family forgot, perhaps by choice, is that legacy is earned in character, not just capital, and right now only one person seems to remember that. By nightfall, the motel phone rang. Monica answered, then put it on speaker. You might want to turn on the news, Logan's voice said. Why? Because their press agent just quit. Live, on air. The ethics committee meeting felt like a funeral with microphones. 5 gray squares filled my screen, each marked by a title and muted expression. Dr. Rezul Khan, Margaret Temple, Vinay Chaudhary, Sister Lillian Mayer, and Arnold Denton. All of them had worked with Raymond over the decades. They'd built non-profit boards, greenlit scholarships, audited foundations. They weren't impressed by titles or tiers. The digital clock in the corner of the Zoom feed ticked upward like a slow burn. Gerald adjusted his tie and his square. Diana sat with a stillness that made you want to check if your screen was frozen. I sat dead center, Monica off-screen, just in case. Let's begin, Margaret said. We are convened to review ethical concerns regarding the Donahue transition. Mr. Donahue, she looked directly at me. You have the floor. I began with the basics. The unfiled draft will, the financial audits, Raymond's own words from the video. Then I shared the email chain Raymond had labeled succession/integrity. He'd written, I trust Miles will resist shortcuts. Power passes in character, not bloodline. If this gets ugly, it means I planned right. I waited. Dr. Khan leaned forward, steepled fingers under his chin. Mr. Donahue, he said, how do you respond to the claim that these materials could have been fabricated post-mortem? They weren't, I said calmly. Everything's time-stamped, forensically vetted. You're welcome to request third-party analysis. Howard Langston's firm is standing by. Then I pulled up Exhibit C, the $2.3 million transfer from Donahue Media into an LLC called Brindle Pathway Holdings. The LLC had no site, no board, no tax footprint, just one signatory, Gerald. He didn't speak at first, just blinked rapidly. Then, that was a temporary investment vehicle. We were exploring vertical mergers, a standard maneuver. I let it hang. Margaret turned to Diana. Mrs. Callahan, she said, Your name appears here as co-authorizer. Diana's gaze narrowed just slightly. That's not possible. I shared screen 2, her signature, her timestamp, cross-verified with prior filings. Silence. Then Sister Lillian spoke, her voice soft and sad. I served with Raymond when we built the Immigrant Scholarship Fund. He warned us once, those closest can still be farthest from principle. Vinay cleared his throat. We've seen enough. The panel muted themselves. The waiting cursor blinked for 6 minutes. Then they returned. Arnold Denton spoke. We hereby suspend all executive transition actions within Donahue Media and its related foundations, effective immediately. My pulse thudded in my ears. He continued, We recommend legal oversight and temporary fiduciary review by a neutral third party. This panel will reconvene in 3 weeks for follow-up. Gerald closed his laptop without a word. Diana stayed on for a beat longer, her screen frozen in that cool, unreadable mask. Then, just as the call was closing, one square unmuted. It was Dr. Khan. He didn't look at the camera. He simply said, Watch your back. Then logged off. Thanksgiving came with nothing but rain and silence, except the ache in my ribs from sleeping on Monica's couch. The cushions sank in weird places, and her cat, Domino, insisted on curling against my neck like a judgmental scarf. The apartment smelled of thawing turkey, burnt coffee, and cinnamon from one of those seasonal candles Monica bought in bulk. Outside, the parade played on TV at half volume. The balloons looked tired. So did I. Happy National Awkward Dinner Day, Monica said, sliding a mug into my hands. Cheers, I murmured, wincing as I shifted upright. Sleep okay? If my spine were a spreadsheet, it'd have a red warning flag. She smirked. Consider that payback for college. You always stole the good futon. Domino leapt onto the back of the couch and stared at me like I was overdue for answers. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Julie, I answered, voice still hoarse. Morning. Just a heads up, she said. Sloan used business funds for personal travel. A Lake Tahoe casino. October 17th. Comped suite, full spa package, wired from Donahue Media's discretionary marketing account. You've confirmed it? Twice. The receipts match her Instagram photos. Location metadata's still embedded. Sloppy. I rubbed my face. Thanks, Julie. This helps. She hesitated. Miles, you've got momentum now. Just don't let it swallow you. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. Message received. An hour later, Howard knocked. He looked older than yesterday. Trenchcoat soaked, eyes tired. But he handed me something wrapped in a soft cloth. Raymond's last message. Final file on the USB, he said. Encrypted separately, audio only. Timestamped October 3rd. I held it like it might crumble. You sure you want to hear it? Monica asked, setting down the carving knife she'd been cleaning. I nodded and plugged it into her laptop. Raymond's voice filled the small apartment like incense. Slow, gravelly, familiar in a way that made my throat tighten. If this is reaching you, Miles, then my trust in your timing proved justified. I've seen what legacy does to people. Turns good intentions into currency, turns currency into war. That's why I left you the watch, not for its value, but because it hid something, just like you. Monica sat down beside me. Domino hopped down, unusually quiet. You're not just my heir, you're my repair. Don't fight for my name. Fight for the space where your name becomes whole again. If you're lonely, know that I was too, but we were never alone. Not really. The message clicked off. I couldn't move for a minute. Just watched the progress bar freeze at 100%. Monica reached over and touched my wrist. He meant it, she said. I looked at her. You knew him longer than I thought." She nodded. "Raymond funded my scholarship. First-generation kids in journalism. He read everything I wrote, even sent notes." I let that settle. He was planting roots I didn't know existed. "That's what legacy is," she said. "Planting trees you'll never sit under." We sat in the quiet for a while. The turkey still thawed in the sink. The parade was over. Then my phone buzzed again. Trent, his text read, "Trial begins Monday. You ready to win?" I stared at it for a long time before answering. Reporters waited outside the courthouse like vultures. I walked through them like fog. Cameras clicked. Microphones stretched toward my face like antennae sniffing scandal. One shouted, "Miles, did you forge the will?" Another, "Any comment on the casino money?" I didn't stop. Just kept walking, coat collar up, watch heavy in my pocket like a second heart. Monica had offered to come, but I told her to wait. This part needed fewer witnesses. Inside, the building smelled of disinfectant and anxiety. Security wanded everyone twice. Phones buzzed, lawyers whispered. Trent met me by the elevators with a nod. "You're ready," he said, more statement than question. "Let's find out." We entered courtroom 6A. High ceilings. Cold light. Judge Kendrick sat like carved stone behind the bench. Stern, female, 60-ish, not here for drama. Diana and Gerald were already seated at their table. Sloane fidgeted beside them, lips pressed tight, hands in constant motion. Gerald looked like a volcano waiting to pick a direction. Diana's mouth was a straight line. "Calling the matter of Donahue versus Donahue et al., the clerk said. Trent stood. "Your Honor, we present new evidentiary material relevant to the succession dispute and financial misconduct allegations." Judge Kendrick nodded. "Proceed." First, we played Raymond's video, the one he recorded weeks before his death. His voice filled the chamber, clear and calm. "If you're hearing this, I'm dead or disregarded. Either way, this is for the record. I intended Miles to hold the reins, not because of blood, but because of clarity." You could feel the shift. Even the reporters in the gallery leaned forward. Then Trent submitted the medical records, originals and forgeries. Notably, Dr. Morales's posthumous diagnosis contradicts all prior assessments. The forged records were submitted one day after Mr. Donahue's death. Judge Kendrick took notes without looking up. Then came the recording. Raymond's study. Date-stamped audio. Gerald's voice, low and tight. "If you don't sign this version, Diana walks. Sloane walks. And we bury what's left of your name in litigation until you're too tired to lift a pen." A long silence followed. Gerald shifted. Diana's knuckles turned white. Sloane looked down. Then Trent turned to Diana. "Exhibit L. Your signature appears on the transfer order to Brindle Pathway Holdings, correct?" She didn't answer. Trent placed a magnified version on the screen. "This signature matches 9 prior filings verified under oath, including tax filings and corporate minutes. Would you like a handwriting analyst to confirm that?" Diana finally spoke. "I was misled about the context." Judge Kendrick raised an eyebrow. "You were misled into authorizing a $2.3 million shell transfer?" Silence. Trent sat down. "The evidence suggests premeditated fraud, coercion, and fiduciary breach." The judge folded her hands. "You'll receive my ruling tomorrow at 10 a.m. Court is adjourned. Gavel strike. Motionless air. Everyone pretended to breathe." As I exited into the hallway, Gerald appeared beside me. His voice was low, measured, different. "Meet me," he said. "Tonight, alone." Then he walked away, leaving the scent of his cologne and a trail of dread behind. I met him in a parking garage off Broadway, half lit, half empty, like every word we said. The lights buzzed overhead, casting yellow halos over faded lines. Cold bit through my coat. The echo of dripping water kept time like a broken clock. I parked near the back, far from the exit, exactly where he'd said to meet. Gerald leaned against the hood of a black SUV, arms crossed. No tie, no smirk. Just shadows under his eyes, and the kind of silence you can't fake. "I figured you'd bring someone," he said. "You figured wrong." A pause. "I'm not here for drama, Miles." "Then why the midnight summons?" He sighed. "Because you're going to win tomorrow, and Diana knows it. She's already distancing herself from everything." I leaned against a pillar, arms crossed to mirror him. "You should be happy," he said. "I'm not here for happiness. I'm here for clarity." His jaw tightened. "Look, my company was already bleeding before Raymond died. Diana offered solutions, legal ones, then not so legal ones. By the time I realized how far we'd gone, you kept going. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice." He looked at me then. Really looked. Like he was seeing something he couldn't name. "Do you know what it's like?" he said slowly. "To build something for 20 years, then watch it vanish in 20 weeks? I didn't answer. I thought about the nights I spent on Monica's couch, the way the pocket watch pressed into my chest, the echo of Raymond's voice. "You're not just my heir, you're my repair." Gerald reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper. "A proposal," he said. 50% of everything that's still unfrozen. Clean slate. You drop the charges, walk away, let the family rebuild on its own terms." I didn't touch the paper. "Call it what it is," I said. "Extortion in an apology costume." He stiffened. "It's a truce." "No, Gerald. A truce implies equal damage. You don't get to torch the house and then sell me the ashes." He stepped forward once, then stopped himself. "I wasn't always the villain, you know." I looked him straight in the eye. "Then you should have picked a different script." He said nothing, just nodded once, a single resigned dip of the head. Then he opened the SUV door and got in. The engine roared to life. As he drove off, the sound echoed through the garage like a closing vault. One more inheritance I didn't want. I stood there in the quiet for a full minute. Let the cold in, let it settle. Then my phone rang. "Trent," I answered. "We won," he said, breathless. "Judge Kendrick ruled in your favor. Complete reversal of the transfer. Full control returns to the estate." I exhaled, barely aware I'd been holding it in. "There's more," he added. "They're requesting mediation, not to fight, to settle, quietly." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Good," I said. "Let them come." We sat across a neutral beige table. No lawyers, just blood, dried and cracking. The mediation suite felt like a forgotten bank vault, soundproofed, windowed high above downtown San Jose, where the drizzle traced slow-moving veins on the glass. The city blurred below us. I imagined it didn't care what happened in this room. Gerald sat to my left. He looked smaller than usual, like someone had deflated the rage inside him and replaced it with a long sigh. Diana, immaculate as always, adjusted a silk scarf that matched the sharp lines in her voice. Sloane sat furthest away, eyes on her thumbnail, legs crossed, as if she might vanish if she didn't move. Trent sat at the far corner, not speaking, just observing. A presence, not a participant, no judge, no clerks, just four people who once shared meals and grudges, trying to separate what belonged to whom, now that the patriarch was gone. "I'll begin," I said, my voice quiet but unshaking. "There won't be a settlement." Gerald's jaw flexed. "Miles," he began. "No." I raised my hand slightly. "You made your offer in the garage. This isn't a negotiation. This is notification." Diana exhaled, slow and deliberate. So this is punishment? I turned to her. Number this is consequence. She blinked, unfazed. Raymond would never have wanted. Raymond gave me the watch, I said, cutting her off. He gave me the USB, the letters, the recordings. He trusted me to finish what he couldn't. Gerald leaned in slightly. We're family, Miles. You can't rewrite that with a verdict. You rewrote it when you falsified his medical records, I replied, when you blackmailed him in his own study. A long silence passed. I turned toward Sloane, whose gaze hadn't left the table. I know you live-streamed the funeral, I said. I know about the Tahoe trip, but I also know you weren't in the room when the documents were altered. She flinched. You're not innocent, I continued, but maybe you're not beyond repair. That caught something in her. Her eyes flicked to mine, wide, unsure. Diana's voice, sharp again. You think you're noble now, Miles? Because you inherited the fortune? I leaned forward slightly. You once called me the extra child, I said. Said I was just Raymond's guilt-made flesh. Maybe I was. But that guilt came with a spine, and that spine's walking you out the front door. Gerald stood up, sudden and stiff. You don't have to do this. I already did. From my coat pocket, I slid a document across the table. It was signed, stamped, legally binding. You have 30 days to vacate the estate, I said. I won't force you into the streets, but I won't let you poison that house another day. Diana reached for the paper with a trembling hand. Gerald didn't even look at it. They both sat there for a moment longer. Then, almost in sync, they stood, left the paper behind, and walked out of the room without a word. Only Sloane remained. She didn't speak right away. Her breathing was shaky, eyes fixed on the condensation outside. Then, softly, Can I talk to you? Just you? I nodded. Trent rose, gave me a glance, half warning, half respect, and stepped outside. Sloane didn't move from her seat. I know I messed up, she said, voice quiet, raw around the edges. And I know I don't deserve your trust, but can I tell you something he told me? Something Raymond said before he died? I didn't answer, just waited. She exhaled. He said, You and Miles both got different parts of me. You got the flair, he got the follow-through. I swallowed something thick. She looked up at me. I don't want money. I don't want anything. I don't know who I am without him watching me screw up. I sat back, unsure if I should respond. The rain thickened outside. Finally, I said, Then maybe now's the time to figure it out. Her eyes welled, but she didn't let the tears fall. Just nodded once. I stood. So, talk, I said, and she did. Sloane wore no makeup, just jeans, a hoodie, and hands that wouldn't stop moving. We sat by the window of a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the Stanford campus. The light outside was winter thin, filtered through eucalyptus trees and commuter traffic. A student in a parka ordered a chai latte without looking up from her phone. Someone coughed softly near the back. It was the kind of place where nobody listened too closely, which made it perfect. Sloane stirred her tea for the 3rd time, though she hadn't taken a sip. I didn't know where else to meet, she said. This is fine. I used to come here in undergrad. Thought I was very edgy for drinking peppermint tea and quoting Sylvia Plath. A smile passed her face, small and quick, like a sparrow. She looked older without the contouring. Younger, too. Real. I found the watch in Dad's desk, she said after a pause. It was tucked under a drawer liner, like he was afraid it would burn through. I didn't move. She reached into her pocket and placed it on the table between us. Still cracked, still silent. The chain coiled gently beside it. He gave it to you, she added. I knew it. Even before you told me about the USB, I wanted to hold something that felt like him. I nodded once. Took the watch, felt its familiar weight settle into my palm again. I don't want to keep it, she said quickly. It's not mine. I ran my thumb along the fracture line, thought about how Raymond had carried this thing through every courtroom, every meeting, every loss. You said you wanted to talk, I said. So talk. She shifted in her seat, finally took a sip of the tea, winced. It was too hot. I was never supposed to be anyone's burden, she said. Not to Dad, not to you, but I was, and I knew it. Sloane, no, let me finish, she cut in, voice rising, then softening again. Every time I messed up, I'd catch him looking at me like I was a project he didn't know how to finish, like I came with too many missing parts. I didn't interrupt. Not this time. I started live streaming for attention, yeah, but also because the algorithm didn't judge me. It didn't sigh when I walked into a room. It just gave me metrics, views, likes. It felt measurable. Her eyes welled but didn't spill. I was scared of being irrelevant. That's what this whole thing was. Not greed, not hate, just fear, cold and dumb and constant. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out a faded photo. Her and Raymond, in front of the estate, Halloween 2002. She was dressed as a pirate. He wore a crooked hat and a soft smile. I just want to feel like I existed to him the way you did. You did, I said, but you tried to erase me first. Her lips pressed into a tight line. I know. We sat in silence again. Outside, a bike skidded on wet pavement and kept moving. I'm not here to beg, she said after a while. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just time. Time to show up without screwing it up. I studied her face, creased with shame, tiredness, and something else. Something I remembered from when we were kids, when she used to follow me around with her sketch pad and pretend she wasn't copying my drawings. Then start by not lying, I said quietly. She nodded once, looked like it might split her in half to hold eye contact, but she did. Okay. I finished my coffee, lukewarm now. She didn't touch hers again. When I stood, she stood too, but didn't move to hug me. I'll be around, she said. I know. She left first. The bell above the door jingled, and then it was just me and the watch again, ticking silently in my coat pocket. I stayed until the table was cleared. The estate smelled like cedar again. The doors groaned open like they recognized me. It was early March, and the hills behind the house wore a soft coat of green. Rain had been generous this season, and the earth hadn't yet dried into the summer's brittle version of itself. New shoots poked through the garden beds. The tulips, the ones Raymond planted after his first heart surgery, were just beginning to open. The sign out front was modest, brushed steel on a dark wood base. The Raymond Donahue Foundation for Elder Advocacy and Media Transparency. Monica was already inside, talking with a young woman in a maroon jacket, one of the first scholarship recipients. Journalism, UCLA bound. Her name was Aisha. She kept smiling like she couldn't believe she was real. Howard stood by the fireplace, hands behind his back. He wore the same houndstooth scarf I'd seen in his study months ago, when this all began. When everything was still fractured, and I was barely holding my own story together. You made it, he said. I nodded. Just like you said I would. He tilted his head. No, Miles? Better. Aisha gave a short wave and headed towards the car waiting at the end of the driveway. Her mother was in the passenger seat, already crying. Monica joined me near the old staircase. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Just letting it land. She leaned her head on my shoulder. He'd be proud, you know. I think so, I whispered. We didn't walk in silence exactly. The old floorboards still creaked, The air vents still coughed when they kicked on, but we didn't fill the space with more words than necessary. We passed Raymond's old study, now converted into a reading room with free legal resource binders. In the corner sat the same chair where he used to write his letters, reupholstered, but still bearing the impression of thought. We circled back into what had once been the formal dining room. Now it was the donor boardroom, a wall of names etched into glass, some familiar, some not. A second plaque listed Raymond's mission statement beneath a framed photograph of him holding that damn pocket watch, like it was the only thing that ever kept proper time. After lunch, vegan wraps and hot cider served by 2 college volunteers, Monica excused herself to meet a contractor about regrading the back patio. I walked alone into Raymond's restored office. Nothing dramatic, no ghost, just quiet. The desk had been polished. His chair turned slightly, like someone had just stepped away for coffee. On the windowsill sat a fresh plant. Monica's touch, no doubt. The same kind she kept in her apartment kitchen. I took the pocket watch from my coat, repaired now. No more crack. The chain reattached. Still old, still Raymond's, but working. I placed it gently on the desk. Tick, tick. I sat in the chair and looked out the window. The trees had started to bloom again. After a while, I rose, walked the hallway one last time, past the living room, now a media lab for interns, past the kitchen where a kettle whistled. Outside, the air was softer, a kind of warmth that didn't need to be loud. I walked down the stone path, reached the front door, and turned the key in the lock. It clicked. I paused. For the first time, it felt like mine. Start prompt 5. The pocket watch ticked softly on the desk, steady as breath. Funny how time doesn't ask for permission. It just moves, with or without us. Raymond once told me that legacy isn't what you leave, but who you leave standing. And maybe that's the point. Repair what you can, hold close what holds you. If this story resonated, hit subscribe and join me for the next journey. I'd love to hear your own story. Leave a comment and let's talk.